Hello guys, and welcome to another video. And in this one I'm going to be doing a bit of discussion on patch 3.22 since we're now 5 weeks into the league, and I wanted to do a bit of analysis on the core game in 3.22 and the league mechanic itself, and just talk about my general thoughts on this patch. And so let's go all the way back to the beginning of the patch with the patch notes release before the league actually started, and I think I was quite disappointed personally with the lack of skill balance changes and the fact that there were only going to be 2 ascendancy reworks. Personally, I thought there was going to be a lot more ascendancy reworks based on the dialogue that Chris Wilson had with Ziggy D in the Crucible Q&A, but this is what we had. We did have some other things coming in the patch, of course, the addition of new keystones to the Atlas tree, which were really big and very promising, and a bunch of new support gems, which definitely went some way to bridging that gap of the lack of skill balance. And of course, the league mechanic looked really interesting. For me, I quite enjoy auto battlers, so I think it looked interesting to begin with, and the addition of tattoos is just an incredible customization option. When the league launched, the league mechanic was incredibly buggy, really disappointing on launch. I think I played it like once or twice in the first 2 days, and I didn't touch it again until they had fixed it 2 weeks later. Let's first do a bit of discussion on the core game. Let's leave the league mechanic until a little bit later on in this video. So, as I mentioned earlier, in this patch they added new keystones to the Atlas, and I have to say that the Atlas passive tree, I've said this many times before, I think it's the single best addition that Path of Exile has made to the game ever. It is the greatest addition to the game. It has made endgame character gameplay loops absolutely incredible. You can just play the game how you want to. You can spec into whatever type of content you want to play. And that means that no matter what type of player you are, no matter what kind of league mechanics you enjoy, no matter what you want to achieve in any given league, you can spec into that on the Atlas tree and you can play the game how you want to play it. And the addition of these new keystones to the Atlas tree just made it even better, and the changes to the Atlas tree were fantastic. I personally tried out a few of the different keystones. I really had a lot of fun with the 7th gate, which is a keystone that allows you to access all league mechanics on the map device rather than just the ones that Kirak is offering for the particular league. You have to spec into all of the Atlas gateways to get that, but speccing into the Atlas gateways is actually quite cheap because you typically always go up one side of the Atlas tree based on your setup for how you want to kind of farm the end game, and you're going to have access to 2 or 3 of the gateways very easily, and then you just spec into them, and then you spec into the ones at the other side when you get to the other side. So you end up having to spend probably 6 or 7 or maybe 8 passive points on that, but you get access to all of the league mechanics that you would otherwise not be able to access. And personally, I was using that to farm heist to get lots and lots of blueprints. And that was really nice because I was playing solo self-found and I was trying to farm the fulcrum for a self-ignite chieftain build. And I think those Atlas tree keystone additions have been great for the core game. And I have to say that right now, I think the core game is in the best place it's ever been. The end game of Path of Exile is in the best place it's ever been. And even without skill balance changes, the end game is just so good. You can just play the game how you want to, and it's fantastic. And of course, we had a whole load of new support gems added to the game. Some of them made a huge splash on the meta, and some not so much. But regardless of how impactful they are to the meta, I think this sort of stuff is always great to expand all of the possibilities for character builds. I personally league started with the new Flamewood support gem, which unfortunately was bugged on launch, but still, these are great additions to the game, and I don't think they quite made up for the lack of skill balance, but they kind of softened the blow, which is nice. And what about the league mechanic? What about Trial of the Ancestors? As I mentioned, the launch state for Trial of the Ancestors was very buggy. It was really glitchy, many bugs in there. You kind of played the game and sometimes you just wouldn't be able to finish the game because some totems were completely invulnerable. There was loads of bugs with the Titanic shell monster. There was different mobs that just would get stuck in place and they wouldn't be moving at all. Totems were invisible. There was all sorts of weird glitches going on. So I basically played a couple of games, a couple of rounds, and I just decided that I wasn't going to touch it again until it had been fixed. And I think the league mechanic itself was pretty much fully fixed about 2 weeks in. And GGG actually also done something which they did in Sanctum League, which was they added content to the league mechanic post-launch. And I really like this approach. I know that some people were calling this out on Reddit back in Sanctum, saying that this was probably unfinished content which just didn't make it into the live launch of the league. But personally, I really like the idea of them coming back several weeks later into the league and adding new content. It makes the game feel alive, it makes it feel really fresh. And they did this in Sanctum with the unique relics that you could get to go through the Sanctum and get different rewards. And in Trial of the Ancestors, we have the same thing with the addition of new journey tattoos. And one of those is the keystone tattoo, which is really popular and very important for build customization. And once the league mechanic had been fixed, personally, I'm a really big fan of the league mechanic. I know that some people don't like it at all, and I think that's completely fine. But I think one thing that everybody can agree on with the league mechanic is that tattoos are one of the best additions to Path of Exile in a long time. They provide even more customization than Cluster Jewels did in Delirium, and it's just incredible levels of character customization. So much so that I had almost completely forgotten about the fact that there was no skill balance changes in this league, because the tattoos basically enable all of these crazy new build ideas and concepts, and it had me just going into Path of Building and just putting together a whole bunch of different build ideas and things like that, because that's just how exciting the tattoos are and how much you can do with them. There's just crazy levels of customization, and I think that's great. Tattoos are a fantastic addition to the game, and I really hope that Trial of the Ancestors goes core at some point. I don't think it will go core in 3.23, but I really hope that it does go core at some point. I hope that they take a look at the league mechanic, maybe tweak the balance a little bit. I think the way how Trial of the Ancestors scales with the ranking is a little bit awkward. You kind of end up getting these ridiculous mobs that have the same health as, like, 20 uber bosses at once, and you just can't kill them, so you just kind of end up trying to cheese the mechanic, which is a little bit awkward. And I think they have to go back to the drawing board with how to actually balance this thing out, and perhaps even make it so that the mobs that you pick are, like, more important than your own character. Maybe you're just a strategist and kind of building things like that. But the addition of tattoos to the game is incredible, and I really hope that tattoos go core in Path of Exile. They add crazy amounts of customization to the game, and obviously they're going to be balanced when they reach the core game. I doubt you'll be able to have 50 tattoos on a character. Some of the tattoos in particular will probably be balanced as well. Maybe they'll even add new tattoos to the game when it goes core, some other new options coming in as well. But I think overall, the addition of tattoos to the core game would be incredible, and I really hope that happens at some point. And one thing to mention is the crazy player retention in 3.22. It is ridiculous 5 weeks into the league that there is so many people still playing the league. And I think the only reason for this, well, actually, there's two reasons for this. One is tattoos, like I've just mentioned. They offer crazy amounts of customization, really fun to interact with, and create new character builds and make builds kind of min-maxed. And also, the other thing is what I talked about earlier, the addition of new things to the Atlas passive tree, which makes the core game in the endgame so much more enjoyable. Those two things combined just made the league so special for me, and I think it has done for many players. And I will end this video with a bit of discussion on my hopes for 3.23. And the list isn't very long because, as I said, I think the core game is fantastic. But my single biggest hope for 3.23 is a sweeping balance pass for skills. I think we desperately need that. We have needed that for a long time. And as a side note, I kind of want to see more reworked ascendancies. I know we got 2 in this league and we had 2 before as well, but I just want more ascendancy reworks. Chris did talk about it in the Crucible Q&A, kind of suggested that we would get a lot more in 3.22, but that wasn't the case. So I'd like to see more ascendancy reworks and big skill balance. That's what I want to see. I'm not really that bothered about getting new skills and things. I think even if they only had like 1 or 2 new skills or new support gems, it's not too bad. But if the main skill balance is shaken up every single patch, there's just so many new things to think about and interact with, especially when you've got ascendancy reworks that were in this patch or in a previous patch, and you haven't kind of interacted with particular skills because they were really weak, but now they're strong, and you're thinking, well, where can this work? Where can that work? And you're trying to slot different things in. And I think that's just fantastic. And that's what I'd like to see in patch 3.23, which I think will arrive around the middle of December. I would expect that Trial of the Ancestors, with the crazy player retention that we're seeing, will get extended a bit. I think that we're going to see the launch of 3.23 at some point in December, probably middle of December, maybe the first week of December, something like that. And yeah, that's really it. That's my thoughts on patch 3.22. I'm really happy with the league. I think it's probably my favorite league ever in terms of all of the things that I've just talked about. And that's about it for this one. I just wanted to do a bit of discussion on patch 3.22 and my thoughts on it. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks to my channel members, of course, for your support. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.